Yeah, we're going to talk to each other. So I'm here with Cameron and Mandy, a couple of legendary educators in our community here. Real excited to have a conversation with you guys. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourselves? Where do you work? Where do you live? That kind of thing.
Yeah, we both work at a place called the Academy, which is the alternative high school in Hamilton Southeastern District. I'm the social worker there, and Cam is the teacher.
Yeah, and prior to that, I was a teacher at Hamilton Heights for 11 years ish, and just loved every minute. And now we just get to unite at a different school, working with a bunch of kids that we think are really awesome.
You were a local celebrity, or still are. It's kind of wearing off a little bit. But so our job today is to unpack a little bit about conflict. And coming here to the end of, I think, the longest year in history, there has been a lot of opportunity for disagreement. And I think a lot of people might be going into this holiday season a little maybe anxious about what conflict might look like when we get there. So I just want to start by asking you guys, what has been your experience with family conflict?
We realized probably pretty quickly into our relationship that we grew up in two very different homes, and conflict looked really different. And we may not have realized that until we started to encounter some things ourselves. So from what we see in our own families, from what we see with the students that we work with, you a lot of times deal with conflict the way you saw it, right or wrong. What you saw your family do is kind of the way that you handle it. That's kind of the way you're taught, even if you know that's not the way you want to do it.
Sure.
It's really hard if that's
it
what
becomes
you
our
see.
default setting.
Exactly.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And for us, that plays out in a lot of different ways. When we're with family now, we go into this setting where we're with people who raised us and showed us their example of how to deal with conflict. And now we maybe deal with it differently based on our own experiences with each other and learning from things that we've encountered. And so now we're walking into an environment where the way we will deal with conflict isn't how it used to be.
Sure.
And isn't how this group is comfortable with. So recognizing that tension and that difference has been key and important, and is still, an ongoing.
I know for me, there are some things that I didn't realize they were weird until I experienced a relationship with somebody who thought that was weird.
Right.
They help point out that. So, what are some things when it comes to these conflicts, disagreements, different types of approach to conflict? What are some do's and don'ts that you've learned along the way?
So one of our family mottos is listen first. So don't go into a conversation already knowing what you're going to say, or if somebody's talking in your head,
just thinking about how I can burn you.
Yeah, you're just waiting to respond. You're not listening to what they say at all. You were just waiting for that opportunity to kind of go after them to bring your point or put your point across. And we always try it, not always do it well, but try to listen first.
Sure. And I think to build on that, one thing we've tried to embrace is the idea that when we're with family, especially the ones that we don't see as often as we would like, that it's important to try to get beyond the question of how's work, how are things going, that surfacey type stuff, and really invest in this relationship that matters a ton. I mean, this is family, and that's not something that we want to take for granted, and we want to continue to build. And kind of in conjunction with that, we know that in our specific family, we've got a little 2-year-old daughter, Lucy, who we think is awesome, but it can be a default to, once the family gets together, to watch the kid in the middle, right, and not have interactions with the other adults there. And I'm sure in other families there's some similar issue where it's not as much about true engagement with the people that you really care about and want to talk to, but it becomes, what's the distractor? Can it be just watching a kid? Can it be just watching a football game? Can it be just talking about the food that we're eating so that we can get through this time? and then later you realize, okay, we missed it this chance.
Sure.
So for us, that's been big to try to understand, okay, we need to invest while we're here. Who knows, who knows what we're going to think afterwards if we don't.
We also believe that don't air things out on social media. That's not the way to move a relationship forward. That only causes some hurt feelings and problems. And if you want to move forward or try to have a conversation, don't do it on social media. Do it together. Talk about it. Things do not end well.
You said something about at the beginning that I want to kind of circle back to. You said that when you start with a posture of listening, right? Your default setting is to listen. And I think we all know that when you listen, like for the other person to feel heard is good. But do you find that listening does something in your own heart, maybe to your ability to feel compassion or empathy with the other person?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. People come into a situation and they're not thinking that they, usually want to hurt somebody else. That's not the intention.
I want to fix the things that you think wrong.
Right. So it's really important that we have different life experiences. We've seen different things. We've had different conversations. We've, believed certain things. And it's important to try to see that in the other person, that they're not your enemy, they're not against you, but we have a lot to learn from each other, even if we disagree with something.
Sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I can tell you that I'm married to one of the world's best listeners. Just flat out, it's true.
My wife is not.
And it plays out in her job, and it's why she's so good at that. But then also within our family structure too. It was just automatic when our family started to blend. For example, it was within weeks maybe that people started to like her way better than me, right?
I feel that.
And that has a lot to do with the fact that she just listens and shows that she cares. And you're right, it does have a huge effect for sure.
Cool. So is there a secret, I think one of the questions that we all feel like this tension is do I engage with that? If Uncle Henry says something and it's like makes you bristle up, maybe, how do you know when, okay, he's not gonna, let's just let him, I don't need to engage in that, but how do you know when it's something this is something we really need to have a conversation? How do you differentiate those two things?
Yeah.
That's a great question, and I don't know all the way.
There's no formula.
But Wisdom. I think it's important, to kind of reflect on yourself and see what is your goal here. Is my goal just to be right and to show you that I'm right and to maybe say it a little bit, maybe to say it a little bit louder than you and sound a little bit smarter than you and show that I know more than you? Or is your goal to actually move the relationship forward and have it grow?
Mm-hmm. And we really believe in general terms that we should not swing at every pitch and probably should not swing at most pitches. We're definitely more likely to, leave time with family wishing we had not said something than wishing we had.
Yeah. I know that for myself, I find myself looking for opportunities, I could hit a home run here instead of I could learn something here.
Right.
And the times where I'm what do I need to learn? I think we both walk away happier than whenever I'm let me hit a home run off your
Which is hard because in the moment, the home run seems
Yeah.
really fun. Yeah. Right?
Nobody doesn't want to hit a home run,
Exactly.
right? So when it comes to family disagreement, or maybe just friends, when it comes to people and disagreement or conflict, what's the ultimate goal that you want to keep in mind? The thing in the back of your head, no matter what he says, no matter what I say, we can disagree, we can have conflict, but I want this to be true. I want to land on this place. What's your ultimate goal?
Yeah, I think the ultimate goal is how do I love this person well, and how do I move this relationship forward? So one thing I think about a lot, and I talk to students a lot about, is anger is is usually a much easier emotion to deal with than sadness, than depression, anxiety, having any kind of vulnerability. So it's just so much easier to resort to anger.
It has easier outlets for sure.
Yeah.
You can hit stuff with a baseball bat.
Yeah. And that's what I think a lot of people do, because that is an easier emotion for people to kind of handle themselves. Maybe they don't react the right way with it, but they would rather feel angry than feel something else. So,
and some of us never even process to, like, there are a whole, like, spectrum of emotions, and it's just easier to, like, weird or different or confusion. It's just like, if you put that in the anger, you know what to do with it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It just it makes sense to a lot of people, even if it's wrong. But I can tell you right now, especially with everything that's been going on, when I'm talking to students, they're telling me constantly, like, everything just makes me angry, or everything is upsetting me right now, or I just want to punch a wall. And they said little things can set me off. And I think we really need to remember, as we're living right now in 2020, that things are hard. And we always say, like, what's the thing behind the thing? So when somebody is coming at you angry or bringing up conflict that maybe doesn't make sense, there's probably more to it than that. There's something
about
deeper.
Something else. Yeah.
So the goal should be, okay, how do I love them, and how do we make this relationship better and stronger?
Yeah, and connected to that, when we feel the anger ourselves, what's the thing behind the thing? What are we really feeling deep down? Yeah.
Oh yeah, like, what I know what you said set me off,
right.
But is it because, like, there's something off between us? Like,
right.
I just am assuming some things. I think that's a big one. Like, we assume negative intentions with people who disagree with us, because our opinions are based on our values. So if you have different opinions, then you have different values, and you have different values because you're a bad person. Like, it's real easy to go through that. Absolutely. Even if we don't do it consciously. So the last question, and this is what I want to end on, and this is really, I think, at the core of what we're talking about here. What role does our relationship with Jesus play into conflict? Maybe a better way to ask is, how should we look different than people without Jesus because we have Jesus in our life, as it pertains to conflict?
Yeah. So I think we know for sure that there's a really big God who loves us a lot and wants to get into the mess with us. So when we're feeling all these emotions going into family situations, or even outside of family situations, he wants to be right there in it with us, just, in the raw emotion of dealing with it. And so I think that's one thing that we want to walk into any of this knowing there's a God inside me who doesn't want me to do this alone, or doesn't want us to do this just the two of us. And I think that also gives us an opportunity to lean on that for perspective, for humility. I mean, we certainly don't have it all figured out by any means, and for patience in so many ways. And then lastly, we know that God granted us this family. I mean, we are full of gratitude for it, and that comes through knowing that, we get to have these interactions with people who love us a whole lot, and that is because there's a God that loves us a whole lot.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the beautiful things about Jesus, everything he did and everything, he came in and did it differently than people expected him to. So when you're looking at conflict, a lot of times you have the expectation of how somebody's going to react. And when you do that differently, with love, with humility, with listening, I think that is a great example an opportunity to show Jesus' love and kind of how he wants us to look at people differently.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to reflect his character in a really real and tangible way. Sure. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate this conversation. We're running out of time. But if you guys have more questions, these guys will be in the panel at the end. Text in that number that has been at the bottom of the screen. It'll come up later if you missed it. But that's it for us right now. Moving on to the next thing.